What is up, everybody, and welcome back to Talkin Wellness, presented by South Florida Wellness Network. As you can see, it looks very different today. I feel like I say that every week.
Yeah.
But this week, for sure, we have a bigger group. My name is Christian.
It's your boy Michael.
It's your girl Kayla. I'm back in black.
Yeah, back in black, like Amy Winehouse. I love it. Kayla's back. We have 3 awesome guests with us. And as you saw by the title, today we're talking about adoption and recovery. Keep in mind, I don't know what the title is yet, but it's something in regards to adoption and recovery. And we can't wait to dig into your guys' stories. So we're going to go ahead and give you an opportunity to introduce yourselves, starting with my good friend here, and then we'll move our way down, okay?
I am John Ray. I am what is my title now? The specialty.
You're a community response.
I'm a community response specialty manager or
something. Oh,
something.
wait, no, you are the specialty.
All right.
That's okay.
So I was recovery navigator, person in long-term recovery.
There you go.
I am, this year will mark my 20th year if I make it till October.
Wow.
So, yeah. Been around a minute.
Wow. Did you start recovery right when you were born?
Yeah, pretty much. Thank you. That's why I appreciate you so much.
Hey everyone, I'm Antoinette. I am a child welfare peer specialist here at South Florida Wellness Network. I have been in long-term mental health recovery for about 14 years now.
Hi, I'm Emily. I am a peer specialist here at South Florida Wellness Network. I am a person in long-term recovery for mental health, and I'm happy to be here.
Welcome, you guys.
Yeah, we are so happy you're here too. So exciting. We're excited about this episode because today we're going to be talking about something that I don't think gets talked about enough, but many people have this similar experience, which is adoption. And we're going to be talking about it from different angles because we have 3 different people that have 3 different amazing stories that include adoption. So I'm going to actually get started and kind of ask you guys, like, what has been your experience? And I'll start with Emily. So Emily, what has been your experience with adoption?
Honestly, it's kind of rough. I was placed for adoption at birth, and it was set up where my birth mother was close family friends with the mother that adopted me. I have an open adoption, so I know my birth parents. I have always known I'm adopted. But it was a difficult situation for me because I dealt with a lot of abandonment issues and not just being adopted, but then after the adoption with having the open adoption, it felt like my birth mother abandoned me over and over again. So I struggled a lot with that. Definitely had some identity crisis going on. But I eventually got to a point in my recovery where I realized that it wasn't because there was something inherently wrong with me, which is what I believed for a long time. I believed that I wasn't good enough, and that's why I was given up for adoption. But I got to the point where they were 15 and 16. They couldn't do it, and I think that they made a good decision. And they placed me with the best possible family I could have been placed with, and I'm eternally grateful for that. But it definitely was a rough road getting to this point, and adoption is a huge part of my recovery.
Wow. Yeah, that's really powerful. Thank you for sharing that. What in the process where you kind of came to realize that it wasn't that it was something wrong with you, like was there things that like really helped you get there, or people, or was it like a big experience, or just kind of like something that gradually happened?
I don't know if I can talk about this. I did an ayahuasca journey because I was struggling so bad with my mental health. And I went through this experience where I felt like I could see myself in my birth mother's womb, and I felt every emotion that she was going through making this decision. Wow. And I felt that it really was the most powerful decision that she had ever made in her life. And so I got to the point where this wasn't just give the child away. Like, this was thought and care put into that decision.
Wow, that's so powerful. It's like seeing it from the other side, being able to kind of like step into that experience of your mother to know that like
physically embody it.
Yeah. Like people would always tell you, oh, it's not because there's something wrong with you. It's they made a decision, and you can hear that and hear that. But until I felt it for myself, it didn't click with me.
Gotcha.
Wow, that's powerful. Yeah, thank you. Antoinette.
Yes, ma'am.
So let's hear a little bit about your journey, because I know you have kind of a different angle with adoption. What has been your experience?
I am a birth mother to a beautiful 11-year-old girl in July.
What is a birth mother? Just
A-
so people know. Yeah.
A birth mother means I became pregnant. I was with my husband and we got pregnant. We did have intention of keeping her, and we had to really think long and hard about the effects of what parenting this child would be for her and what it would be for our family, 'cause we had already had 2 other children at the time. So it was not an easy decision. It is also not surrogacy. So that was my egg, his sperm, my kid, carried full birth, and then delivered and placed into adoption. And in my journey, I had already had picked the parents and everything. They were even in the delivery room with me when I gave birth. And her mom actually cut her umbilical cord.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's powerful. Yeah. So what brought you to the decision, like you and your husband, because I'm sure it was like a very difficult decision that you both had to make, obviously. But what really brought you all to like deciding that and like going through with being a birth mom?
So for me, actually, adoption presented itself a few times before I made that decision. A coworker of mine had shared her adoption story with me, and like I commended her. I was like, I had had a miscarriage before, and it killed me. So I was like, I could never like carry a child and then give that child up. I know what it is to grieve a child. And then there was one day I was like just sitting at home playing on YouTube, and an adult woman, her adoption story came up, and I decided to watch it. And in part of that adoption story, she brought in her birth mother, brought in her adoptive mother. It was like that, and she came, in that story, she came to the realization of like, this is the best and most beautiful life for me to have both of my mothers. And that's kind of where I started my thought process of actually thinking that this was something for me. And then I really thought about, what does it mean to parent this child? At the time, me and my husband were working. I was working as a hostess. He was working at the port. He was working 80 hours a week sometimes. He was in school for his bachelor's degree, so he wasn't even done with school. He always said he wanted to be done with school before we had any more children. I had my oldest daughter I saw her every other weekend, and my youngest daughter solely relied on me. And then it came a point in my pregnancy where I couldn't even work because I had high-risk pregnancies. So I thought long and hard about it. And one day I went to breakfast with my husband, and I sat him down and I was like, listen, this is something that I've been thinking about for weeks, probably about a month now. It's not an easy decision, and I don't expect you to make a decision within a day, but I think that this is what we should do, and this is the reasons why.
Yeah.
And throughout the day, I went to work after that, and throughout the day he thought about it, and we had the conversation, and then we began the process where we worked with an agency. We ended up not finding our parents through an agency. I actually knew the adoptive parents from my childhood, actually.
Wow.
Full circle life.
Yeah.
And
How did you find out that they were like even looking to adopt?
My mom, actually. I told my mom. My mom doesn't normally talk to people, and she was working with my daughter's mother's sister, so her aunt at the time, and like she asked her what was wrong or something like that, and my mom like broke down crying, explained the situation that I was in and what we were considering, and she was like, my sister's looking to adopt.
Wow.
Can we connect them? So my mom waited a little bit, and then she's like, hey, listen, I'm sorry. I kind of talked to this person about it, and they might have a parent for you. So I was like, okay, there's no harm in an email.
Yeah.
Send me an email. That became very real. I had already been looking at profiles of parents previous to getting this email, but it made it very real, and it took like a month for me to even respond.
Where were you
to
looking
her.
for profiles? Is there like an adoption profile?
Yeah,
Okay.
so I went through an adoption agency that's in North Miami. They connect. So you have an adoptive surrogacy or a birth parent surrogate,
Yeah.
not surrogate. Sorry, advocate.
Okay.
That advocate then walks you through the whole process.
Got
You
it.
get these books, and in these books, it's books that the parents have put together with pictures and information about them and what they're looking for in an adoption and all of that. And my husband and I had already decided he wanted a semi-closed adoption. I was like, no, I want to know my child, so I want an open adoption.
Yeah.
And we settled on an open adoption. But the parents that we were getting all wanted either closed or semi-open.
Right. What can you just for our viewers and even for me, what's the like what would entail like an open adoption? Because I know also Emily, you have an open adoption. So how much access does that give like a biological parent or even the child if they want to pursue a relationship or whatever that looks like?
So an open adoption makes it's exactly what it says. It's open. However, something that everybody has to remember is as the adoptive parents, at any moment, they can revoke the openness at any moment.
But is the
There's-
openness like they still have to agree upon like say you want to call and they decide like I don't want to answer the phone, they're able to
They
do
don't
that?
have to.
Okay.
The openness means that once a year, this is the minimum that they have to give me. Once a year, I get a letter telling me how the year went with some pictures.
Okay.
That's the level of openness that they have to maintain. But outside of that, they don't. I am very blessed, and I know I'm very blessed because I get to see my daughter on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Like, my kids know who she is. She knows who they are. She
She knows you were her biological mom.
she calls me and my husband her tummy parents.
Oh.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
So she says that she's very lucky because she gets two sets of parents. She has tummy parents and then she has her parents.
How old is she?
She's gonna be 11 in July.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she's and her mother's great. Her mom's a school psychologist, so like this girl was set up for
Yeah.
success.
It was almost like divine, in the sense
Yes.
that like your mom spoke about it. This was this person. Did you go through an interview process?
So normally that's how it's supposed to be if you go through the agency. They weren't people who were in the agency, like parents that were in the agency. They came in after we chose them. The way that it worked was actually me and my husband agreed that we wouldn't choose anybody that we knew. So I knew I had to because I knew. The minute I read her email and I was able to process that, I knew that this was the parents.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, okay, well, how do I
Why did you decide to not go with someone you know? Is because you didn't want to be too involved in the... Did you want to...
We thought that it would be very confusing for her. We didn't know how we would feel on our end either, and we didn't want that feeling to affect her in any way.
And I'm only asking because I see that you're in the exact opposite situation,
So
and it
we
seems like it's
are.
working out really well.
It is.
Yeah, so
It
interesting.
is working out really, really well. I actually got pictures. She went to iFly this past week, so I got to see the
cool.
videos of her flying at iFly this week.
And you also seem like... I mean, I don't want to step too far, but you say my daughter. It seems like she's obviously still very much a part of your life. You have children, correct, as well?
Yes, I have
Would
3.
you consider her as equal part?
100%.
Interesting. And I'm just to add context and just like if anyone else has that question out there, I want to ask these questions.
Absolutely.
in
Yeah.
case
Oh,
I'm,
yeah, absolutely. And there's so much that goes into being a birth mother. Like I had a child after her, and I have that child
Yeah.
with her father.
Yeah.
And that my entire pregnancy with him, I felt like I couldn't bond because I was going through this pool of how dare I have this child when I gave this child away. And I had to go through that, and I had to kind of do like an extra step of grieving, I guess, when it came to my pregnancy with her, because I was fearful of what is this gonna do to her. She knows I'm pregnant. She knows that me and him are her mom and dad. I don't want her to feel like she wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just that I know as an adult, I'm in a different place. I'm financially stable enough to have another child. I'm in a different space in my life. And I don't regret the decision that I made because she's gone through so many things. Like she's had junior rheumatoid arthritis in her knee. They've flown out specialists.
Yeah.
I would have never been able to do that. She's been in tutoring, and I would have never been able to afford tutoring for her. And there's things like that come up like this in her life where when I'm feeling bad, like, did you really make the right decision? I look at it and I'm like, I gave her the ability to have the parents that could afford the things that she deserved and needed.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Emily? Did your parents or your biological
Yes.
have children after? How was that experience? Like,
So my birth mom ended up with a wonderful woman, and that woman had 4 kids that they ended up raising together. And then my birth mom went on to get a sperm donor to have another kid. And I want to commend you because it sounds like you have still made your daughter feel so important and so special. And I didn't get that.
Yeah.
And that really hurt. My birth mom, the last time I saw her, I went out and I got to see my little brother. And they told me that my little brother had the same soul that I did. And to me, it felt like she got a redo instead of another child, which is a great thing. Good for her. She was ready for it. She deserves that. But they kind of discounted me in the process. And it sounds like you never did that to your daughter.
Yeah.
So I just want to thank you for the way that you've handled it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so powerful.
It seems like, yeah. I mean, obviously, according to your story, it seems like Antoinette was just, she dealt with a lot more of the situation, like mentally, and like put herself in those shoes a lot more.
Yeah.
And not to say that, I don't want to speak for your parents or birth mom, but not to say that she wouldn't feel that same way or hurt or like disappointment that she couldn't raise you the same way, but she just probably wasn't able to have that same level
It sounds
of
like my birth mom
empathy.
didn't get to the same level of healing
That
that you did.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say.
That's
I think
powerful.
that there's such a level of healing and like to be your mental state in going through like being a birth mom and the choices that you made, but even still walking through the emotional complexities is like you allowed that whole process, whereas like it sounds like your birth mom your biological mom may not have gotten that same type of healing. And so she pursued things very differently, and I think that it's super important to like talk about both sides of it, because obviously I feel like your story is like so beautiful, Antoinette, and it's like you were just in the right space, and had the support and with your husband and things like that. I'm not negating that there wasn't challenges, because I'm sure that was probably the hardest decision. That's such a selfless thing to do as a parent, is to recognize that you're incapable of carrying or raising a child and to give that child away, but I am so profoundly impacted by your healing journey, Emily, and the way that you have chosen to heal from this and walk that path of finding your worth and knowing like that process, because that impacts the way that you move through life too. And so seeing both sides of it is just like so powerful, and we're about to bring on another side, which is so amazing because we have so many different perspectives here today. But John, I'd like you to talk a little bit about your journey through adoption, because it's different than both of these wonderful ladies.
Yeah, kind of a combination of the two. Emily had mentioned sharing how I found out. I don't recommend to normal people. So, in a family dynamic, like when siblings get mad at each other, they're like, oh, you're adopted. Well, probably at around like 6 or 7, my sister pulled that one on me. And I was sharing, to me, it kind of like beat it off, to a young child, like what's adoption, and then you go, Mom, my sister said I was adopted. What's that mean? And then you're like, oh crap, how do I deal with this feeling? And I think I don't think I parked it, but I semi-parked it. I was like, all right, I don't know what that kind of means. Let's just kind of wait and see how this feels out. I had, I had siblings. I really didn't, as far as my recovery journey, I don't think I recognized the subliminal thoughts that were there. And I started to, like in my recovery journey, I started to kind of notice a trend about halfway into my recovery. Hey, why does this pattern keep repeating in relationships, right?
What was the pattern, if you don't mind me asking?
So the pattern that was repeating for me was abandoned before I get abandoned, like kind of like a self-sabotage type thing.
Yeah.
And I would get into relationships that were like really good or really healthy or really toxic. And I was like, I'll just skip out before it gets to that level. And I never really consciously I didn't know where it was coming from.
Yeah.
Like I was like, you got abandonment issues. I was like, no, I don't, I'm a guy, or whatever the case may be. Yeah. And so for me in my recovery journey, like I just started reflecting back and I actually inventoried all my past relationships. And I was like, common denominator.
Yeah.
And it was a rough week or 2 weeks worth of processing that feeling on trying to be like, okay, I do have, as far as I was in a closed adoption. I was adopted at birth. Could have been adopted from the same place. Children's Home Society down in Miami is who my parents dealt with. My story, if I backtrack it along Emily's story, is my parents were 14 and 15 years old. And in high school, got pregnant, didn't know what to do, right?
Yeah.
Strong religious background, Italian and Puerto Rican is my dad was Italian, my mom was, or reversed, I'm sorry. My mom was Italian, my dad was Puerto Rican.
Wow. Yeah. That's so, I
go.
love, yeah.
So,
I love your mix.
So yeah, and how I found that is later on in life when I decided to have children, I wanted to know non-identifying information. For me, combined, my parents were my parents. I never had that. I never actively seeked out my maternal parents ever. I was blessed to be in a home. I had loving, caring parents. I had a great family upbringing. I never felt the need to go, but when I started to have children, I wanted to know non-identifying information so that I could fill in some blanks. Was there medical history? Was there anything that I needed to know on that end of it? And that's really where I left it. I got non-identifying information back from the state, and I left it there. And it was good. As far as the recovery process on it, like I think that was the best thing I did, kind of like you having that epiphany. Me personally, when I had that epiphany, I wrote a letter to my to my birth mother and burned it and was done. Because I'm like, I don't want to carry that around in my life.
Yeah.
As we've shared together, I know what it could do. And I didn't want that. And so I wrote the letter, burned it, done. And I don't think I ever rehashed that.
Yeah. Do you feel like like when you talked about like noticing the patterns in your relationships, do you feel like that stemmed from somewhere like in your identity? Was there ever an aspect where like you didn't feel like you belonged and then you regained that? Because it sounds like your experience is very different because you didn't really want to seek out your biological family except to understand some of those missing gaps, right?
Correct.
But was there like a process for you within, finding out you were adopted, whether it was like in your adolescence or recognizing that in your adult years where you kind of went through that?
Yes and no. I think the why is always a question that you can't answer, right? No matter what.
Yeah.
You can find out the identifiers like, hey, they were young. You can connect the dots.
Yeah.
But that why, like Antoinette shared, like that's a logical decision, right?
Yeah.
That's a healthy behavior. That makes sense. And Emily and I being on the back end of that going like, right? That to me fills in blanks. But when you're young and going through that, where you can relate to like, I don't know what this feeling is, it's hard to process. And especially when, for me, it was subliminal. Like, this is my family. This is what I have, what does that look like on internally, not recognizing why these behaviors are coming out? Did it lead to my addiction? No. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I can't answer those questions. And even when I'm dealing with people, is it biological? Is addiction biological, genetic, whatever it is? I don't have that piece.
Right.
So I just have to deal with what is, right? So I think the piece for me was just like, how do I stop the potential pattern going forward? And how do I use that? We shared, like, how do I flip that into a superpower on being able to relate to people on a different level? There's tangibles that we don't understand. There's pieces that we don't. It doesn't matter. We have to deal with what is. And I think that for me, as far as my healing process, that was beneficial because I was like, how would I want, if roles, I have kids. So if roles are reversed and my kids went through this behavior or went through this feeling, how would I want them to process it? and I need to show what good looks like. So I'm like, okay, even though these things in my life happened, it doesn't. I need to process that, move on, go forward. If
Yeah.
that makes sense.
So, I'm gonna put this back real quick. Sorry about that. So, quick question. You bring an interesting perspective too, where you not only were adopted, but now you have kids. So, I want to ask you, how do you think your experience has shaped the way you parent today?
I don't want to say it affected any way how I parented. I was divorced. My kids were young when I got divorced, and so we brought in a blended family. And to me, family's family. Like, it doesn't matter, biological, non-biological, blended, whatever the case may be. And I showed the utmost respect to my kid's mom's husband at that time, because I don't want to put them in a position to where they have, I guess, your example is great, right? I'm mixed in this feeling on how do I feel on this. I didn't want that feeling, and not saying I did it right, but it seems to be right with them. Family's family, it's a label. But we also talked about it a lot. My kids know I'm adopted. They knew it from the beginning. They also know that my parents are my parents.
Yeah. Do you think your parents would have told you were adopted had your sister not like let the cat out of the bag?
I think ultimately my dad probably would have. My mom probably would have kept that close to her because of being the mom piece. She had other siblings. I won't even, that'd be a whole nother podcast if I unpack that whole thing.
So in general, to like the whole sentiment of everything, would you say you were a bit almost like indifferent to the situation? You were kind of just, it was happening.
Correct.
You were there.
Correct.
Okay, so with that being said, if you had never been told, do you think anything would have ever changed in your life?
I don't think so. Yeah, I definitely, that's what I was saying outside. I think as a kid, kids are super pliable and able to adapt very super
absolutely.
quick. So when I heard it, it was like, okay. But then it was like 4 days later, I was like, play in the sandbox and be done with it. You know what I mean?
It's funny because I had the same situation because we talked about how my mom's went through her own situations, and like I was watching Family Guy and the cops walked in, and then obviously like months would go down later and situations evolving and getting worse, but then I'm there just like I'm in school.
Right.
Right. You don't really know what's happening until
But do you
way
think
later.
underneath that, because it's like you still experience like things where you saw in your relationships, right? Like you said, like subliminally.
Right.
So like
Subconsciously.
my thought process in that is, even if our like reality and our like consciousness isn't, there's always that underlying unconsciousness, and oftentimes we don't connect those until we're getting older. And I think that's why most people don't hit that like kind of wellness transformation or recovery transformation until they're a little bit older, because they start to be like aware of like that unconsciousness, almost like in your story, Emily.
You guys can't hear it, but I hit the megaphone. That was awesome. That was like so on point. That was so true.
I feel like I was very forced to acknowledge it because it was thrown in my face all the time because of the open adoption, where I had this relationship with my birth mom, and sometimes she would show up and sometimes she wouldn't. And so I was constantly faced with this thinking about being adopted. So I had no choice but to heal it.
Yeah.
It had to be done.
Yeah. And the difference is, honestly, is like when I hear about like sometimes an open adoption may not be the best for a child, because it depends really on where that parent is in their life and their journey.
I will say, though, thankfully, I have a beautiful relationship with my birth father. We text all the time. I haven't seen him in a few years, but we have a great relationship. He has always made it very known that I'm important to him and that I'm cared about and that I was wanted.
Yeah.
So he has healed part of that for me.
Oh, that's so awesome. That's so beautiful. Yeah. It's looking at kind of just like both sides of it and like where, because I think every adoption is different and I believe every person's different. So the way that we even walk through that process is different. But I think that the underlying, that unconscious stuff, there can probably be some similarities in when you walk through that.
Yeah, John, you hit on it a little bit, but I really wanted to hear from all of you guys. And I want to be a little sensitive in the sense that I don't want to create any offense or any uncomfortability. But is there any sense of blame that you have, you two, from the perspective blame for your birth parent, and you maybe any internal blame that you might have experienced, or resentment for yourself? Is there any of that feeling that you could elaborate on a little bit?
For me, I think I got over the initial abandonment, the initial being adopted. I came to terms with that. I feel like they made a good decision. I'm happy with it. It is what it is. There's still some trauma, but it is what it is.
Like acceptance. Like you had
Acceptance,
radical
for sure.
acceptance.
Yes, exactly. It was how my birth mom has treated me since that adoption that I blame her and I hold resentment, and the reason I don't talk to her anymore. Because it was like abandonment over and over and over again, and I had to be an adult in the relationship so early on. But my mother, the one that adopted me, was so amazing that she never closed that relationship. She always kept it open and had it on my terms, and I decided when that relationship was going to be open and when I closed it. And so that was powerful and gave me power back in my life when I felt like I didn't have a lot. So I think that she handled it beautifully. But there's definitely some blame and some resentment there. But like John said, I've definitely written some letters and thrown them away. But I think that's a good coping skill for it, for sure.
Yeah,
Talk
absolutely.
about wellness tools right there.
Do you think?
Absolutely. I even, as a birth mother, I spent my entire pregnancy writing to my child.
Yeah.
I have poetry. I have poetry that I can like pull up right now that I
Yeah.
still have. Like,
Yeah, that's gonna be an upcoming episode. We're gonna do wellness through poetry, and she's gonna be honest. So look out for that, guys.
For the blame aspect, I went through years of shaming, not so much blaming, but shaming myself, because I did have 2 children before her, and it was, how could you be so irresponsible? How could you go through this? How could you put her in a position where she could possibly feel all of the things that Emily is feeling? You know, how could you do that? And, you know, obviously crying, endless crying went into that. And it was actually a family member who looked at me and goes, "You're grieving a child who's not dead. You get to see her. You get to be in her life. And yeah, it hurts, but she's alive."
Yeah.
And that really hit me, because between my oldest daughters, I had a miscarriage. And that miscarriage, I spiraled. And that's when like my final attempt of suicide was, and I almost made it to the other side. And because of that, when the adoption agency came into the picture, the first thing they offered us as birth parents was therapy. And that was the first time I ever really took therapy, and I took it seriously. And I worked through a lot of crap that had nothing to do with my pregnancy, thankfully. But if it wasn't, everything's in divine plan, in my opinion. If I hadn't gone through that miscarriage and spiraled the way that I did, I would have spiraled when I did the adoption.
Yeah.
And who knows where I would have been. And in the end, yeah, I grieved and I had that shame and I carried all of that with me, but it also gave me a fire. I was a high school dropout at 23 when I gave birth to this child. At 24, I had a high school diploma. I was in college dropout, but I was in college, and I was parenting my kids. I was more hands-on with my oldest daughter. Like, it really lit a fire, because for me, it was, this adoption can't be in vain.
Yeah.
This was a hard decision for everybody. She had no choice in this decision.
I love that.
The least that I can do is put some purpose in my life and stop just going with the emotions, because I was just surviving.
Yeah.
I was just surviving from childhood. Like, that carried on into my adulthood, and the adoption had to be for a reason. Everything is for a reason, and I had to give it the reason.
Yeah.
So my reason was, I'm going to fix my life and I'm going to be the mom that she did once deserve. So when she is ready to have that motherly relationship with me, I am in a space where I can take it. I can sit at the table and take the fact that this is her perspective, and she may feel exactly how Emily feels, or she may feel how John feels. And I have to own that and respect that that is her perception of what happened, because that is her right.
Yeah, that's huge. That is huge. Okay, so let me just like preface and like restate that. No matter what it is that the person that has been adopted feels, that is their right. It is their right to
Absolutely.
process those emotions and to go through that, because each experience is different. And I could imagine that it's a whirlwind of emotions where you feel one way, another way, think like that it's just like, you know, it's nonlinear. And so being able to be in a place where if your adopted child does pursue a relationship with you, whether it be at 18, 7, 54, whatever, that you're in a place to have that conversation with the level of humility to be able to listen to what their perspective is and allow them to own that, and you own it too in that space. That is powerful.
Yeah, and it goes to show really like how much, and this doesn't necessarily have to do only with adoption. It really has to do with every aspect of our culture and
Yeah.
society. I think we have a big problem. I'm just going to speak here in America because I can't speak for other cultures, but where we feel for some reason that we get upset when someone's angry, or we question somebody's sadness, and I not to go into much detail, but I was writing a report for school, and one of the questions that was on the report was to comment on somebody else's post, right? So I'm looking at others' posts, and there's an individual who said something about a character in the book that we read, saying like, "Oh, she should have been kinder to him. She should have found support for him. She should have stayed." And immediately, what went to my mind is, "But what about her feelings? Like he hurt her, he lied to her, but we're questioning that she had to do something." And I feel that it's a big problem because we don't take time to realize that, hey, maybe they're angry for a reason, maybe they're sad for a reason, and that's valid, and it is in that validation that we can find, as you guys stated, get that power back, right? So I think, and this goes to everybody who's watching, not just parents or not just children or not just people who have experienced some form of adoption in their life, to everybody who has any relationship with people. I think we need to take a step back and really evaluate, are we validating the feelings in our families? If your brother is mad at you and you're like, "Oh, it's my brother," whatever, hey, take a step back and maybe ask,
Why?
maybe they're pissed off because you did something, or if your children are mad at you, like you shared, Antoinette, like as a parent, how can one come to respect that and understand that? Obviously, there's always need to be respect. There's always needs to be like kindness or whatever you want to, however you want to say it. But ultimately, it's that validation of like, okay, I understand why you're feeling this way, and I'm not going to judge you for that. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Can I add? So, being the youngest one at this table, so and I think that's true, but taking that a little step further, right? I think we as society and we as people need to be a little bit more open and receptive to hearing the other half,
Yeah.
and not creating like a response or creating a bias or anything like that, because and if you don't mind, I'll share. So, about a month ago when we started talking about this, right? Like we're riding, and I won't get into the details on it, but there was, I think that's part of the bonding, that we have. So we're riding, and Em brought up like something she was extremely passionate about, right? When we were talking about this topic. And with that being said, I sat
Do you want
back.
to preface it?
No, not really. No, but it was a strong feeling that you had, and it made me uncomfortable. However, the next day, right, I came and I thanked you, not because I'm a better person, because I want to know why you feel that way. And then we talked, and like we've had talking about this. We wanted to know each other's, but it was super important for me to understand that feeling of why there was so much angst inside you, because I didn't feel that, right? And because I didn't feel it doesn't validate that it's not real, or that it's not right? But it also, from my personal growth as a person, like that was extremely important for me because I have to sit, especially in the jobs that we do, right? You have to break yourself down to a micro level and sit back and go like, you know what? Is it valid? It's valid to you. It's valid to you. It may not be valid to me, but like for me, I think we as society, going to your point, is we need to be open and receptive to being able to hear you. Maybe not feel you, but be able to hear you and give validity to that because that causes me to grow as a person. And it is so true that we just stop doing that.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that is a huge detriment to us. Because I share with her all the time. I learned so much from just like driving around and being an Uber driver and all that. But that feeling is it's important. And it's important for your growth as well, you know?
This is a controversial topic, but I feel like we should give voice to this because I know other adoptees feel the same way. What he's talking about is my view that abortion is a valid option instead of adoption. And that I feel if it was me in my birth mom's shoes, that's what I would have done. And I think that it's a solid choice, and I don't think that it should be discounted because if I am so grateful for my life and where I am now and the way that my story has unfolded, and I'm glad that I have been through things that I can now help others with. But if I had the option of never having to have been through the things I've been through, I would have picked that option.
Oh man, that's so hard to hear.
Uh-oh.
Because like, not that I'm anti-abortion or anything like that, but I'm
Welcome to the Mike Couch show.
No. It's just like I honestly get so. I mean, I've met people in my life that have taken their lives, you know, prematurely, and I'm a big like advocate or not advocate, but I believe that everybody goes. I don't want to invalidate anybody's trouble because there's people that go through way worse traumas than others.
Of course, yeah.
But I think life is a roller coaster. There's ups and there's downs, and I think it's unfortunate that a lot of times that people, you know, come to that conclusion that they need to do that to themselves because they're at such a low point in their lives. Yeah. Not understanding that there could be a possible
That's
higher.
why if there was an option where I just didn't exist, where I didn't have to hurt anyone and no one had to go through anything and I didn't have to hurt myself, but I just didn't exist.
Yeah. But would you not want to enjoy your life? Like, let's say now.
I'm saying now I do enjoy my life, but I have to. You know?
Yeah.
And like I had to heal so much of my life has been self-work and taking care of myself and advocating for myself and being an adult when I should have been a kid.
Yeah.
If I didn't have to go through that, I would have picked that.
Got you.
Yeah. And it's not necessarily like, you know, I feel that a lot of people hear that and they immediately want to start like saying all these different things and opinions. And I understand that. But at the same time, kind of going back to what John was saying, there needs to be some sort of understanding in validating those emotions, right? Because even at the core, if you don't agree with the argument, or with this argument or any other argument that we could come up with, like we could spend hours in this podcast talking about like why you're right or you're wrong, or why you're right or you're wrong. Right? We're all different people, and at the end, exactly, we operate differently, and I understand that. But the fact that you felt that way, that's real.
And I know other adoptees feel that way, which is why I wanted to say it.
Like,
Well, I'd like to counteract that statement because maybe you're just the first adoptee to finally give voice to it. I could never have that perspective, and I commend you and I thank you for giving me that perspective. We talked about this a few weeks ago, and you gave me that perspective, and I was taken back by it. But I also was able to stand there and listen to you as a birth mother and hear the pain that you experienced and understand it. And that gave me a different perspective, especially because, like, with my journey, as I shared with you, with my journey, I feel like it's taboo. Adoption is more taboo in our society than abortion is. And I don't understand why they're not equal options. Yeah. It is what it is. I said what I said. I'm sorry. But I hit the ground running. I was never ashamed enough in my space of healing where I didn't claim my adoption. This was my journey. It was one of my hardest decisions that I ever had to make in my entire life. Like literally the kid's life is in my hands. And I had a family member stop speaking to me. If it was surrogacy, I would accept it, but you're giving away my niece. I had a coworker tell me, you're selfish because you didn't have an abortion. And I looked at them and I was like, to know the parents that my child is with right now and know everything that they experienced in the journey that it took for them to get their child.
Yeah.
And know that I was a part, just a little small part
It's so
of
crazy
that
because there
dream
could be
come
such
true for
opposites
them.
to that idea. Because their parents could be like, "We're so grateful that she went through all that because if she had not, and if she had aborted the kid, we would not have our kid." Let's say if they have trouble conceiving or whatever
Yeah,
the
there's so
issue
many
is.
people
And
that
that's
can't have
exactly
children.
where my parents are. And I get it all the time from my daughter's mother. I get text messages randomly like, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be a mom.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
And I get that and I know that and I experienced that with her by having her in the room with me when the baby was born. I got to witness that woman become a mother. And that was the most magical moment. Like a lot of people don't know this, but you can't sign your rights until 48 hours after you give birth in the state of Florida or when you get discharged from the hospital. So my rights were not terminated until after I birthed that child.
Yeah.
So I went through the whole thing, and she was without epidural.
Yeah.
I say that she was my lesson. God had a plan for me, and I needed to understand how hard this decision was going to be, and the pain needed to be included in that, and I'm well aware of that now that I've experienced it. But I got to witness something that I was blessed enough with my oldest daughter that somebody took a picture of me looking at my daughter and that moment of becoming that mom, my oldest daughter. And when my daughter was born, I watched that moment between her and her mother.
Wow.
And I got to witness that. And you have, as a birth mother, you have so many doubts in your mind. Are you making the right decision? You can pull back at any moment, but you're going to be affecting other people. And there's so many things that go on in your head. And it was, and I tell her this all the time, it was that moment. The moment that I gave birth to her and I watched her look at her daughter for the first time and I witnessed her become a mother. It was that moment that I knew, you know what? This is bigger than me.
Yeah.
This is her. Like, sorry.
No,
I
it's
got
okay.
you on that one.
All of you guys, this is such powerful stuff.
This
you
is
know,
actually
it's-
the first time I've never cried.
I always cry.
It's the healing journey,
Yeah.
I'm telling you.
Yeah.
But I just,
Go ahead.
you are so selfless, and I want my birth mother, if she ends up watching this, to know that I know it was a selfless decision. And that's powerful, and you're thanked for it, and you're appreciated for it. And it's just awesome that you were able to do something so selfless.
So I guess this is a great place to ask the final question. So at the end of the day, this podcast will and forever be trying to seek wellness through your guys' stories. Whether it be last week's episode with our human trafficking survivor and sharing how she found wellness after such a horrific experience, whether it be through our more comedic episodes like music and movies and finding wellness with that. The goal is always wellness. So I just want to extend a thank you to every single one of you for sharing your journeys. I know this is not necessarily relaxed or a comfortable space,
Lighthearted work.
right? This sharing your story so openly for everybody to see can be very uncomfortable, but you guys stepped up, and I really appreciate you guys for doing that. So I want
It's
to.
necessary. I just want you to know it's necessary.
It's necessary, right?
because
That's the whole concept.
pain and the purpose, because there's purpose beyond pain, and I see that in each of you. Each of you have such an impact and an imprint to leave in this world, and it's so tied to your specific stories. So I feel honored to just even share a table with you.
Yeah.
Right.
And there's two main reasons why we do this show, or at least for me, is obviously it's social media to reach out and to get it so people can hear these stories. And then two, for us, you know.
Absolutely.
I've learned
So much. So
from
much.
listening to stories and just having to experience other people's emotions. And if we could pass that along to one person, two people, three people,
Yeah.
that could receive that same message that are maybe in those same shoes.
Yep. So
it could do a life
you
changing work.
you gave me the alley-oop. I appreciate you. That's my final question. What would be some advice that you would get to? There's interesting perspectives here, so I want to hear from all of you. What advice would you two give to a child who is going through that experience of either finding out they're adopted and having to deal with that, or they knew and now they have to continue to deal with those emotions? What kind of advice would you give? And obviously, Antoinette, what advice would you give to those mothers and fathers and family that are going through that experience of having to birth mother surrogacy or just putting up a child for adoption? That's a difficult situation. What advice would you give to them? So we can go, I would appreciate if we could start with you two and then end off with Antoinette with her perspective on parents.
My first piece of advice, which will always be my first piece of advice, is therapy. Therapy is amazing. It helps so much. But just for me, a big part of my healing is finding spaces that you are loved and finding spaces that you belong. I think a big thing I struggled with was not feeling like I belonged anywhere. But I found my pockets and I found my people, and that heals me every day. Just to be around people that I know love me and I know care about me and I know choose me. Finding people that choose you is something that makes you feel more human again.
Yeah, no, of course.
Helps you find yourself again. But just knowing that you as you are is okay and worth it is a big piece that you need to get to, and you need to do the work to get to those places. And it takes work, whether it's journaling, writing letters, going to therapy, doing all the coping skills, yes, to make yourself feel like you are a person that's worthy, and just knowing that it's not because there's something was wrong with you. No. There's nothing wrong with you. You are okay as you are.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's my biggest piece of advice.
Awesome.
How about you, John?
How do I trump that? You know?
I know, it's like,
That's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
Episode over.
Yeah.
No, you don't have
Mic
to.
drop.
I can't mic drop. I get kicked out of the podcast. But
I got some
Yeah,
tears
right,
in the back
right.
I can get you.
okay. No, but you know, best advice that I think being open and communicating and talking is super important. Know your audience. Make sure that you find a safe spot.
Read the room, that's a good one,
Right? Yeah. You don't want to burst into your parents and go, "I was adopted," but trying to figure that. Like, I agree with everything that you say, and like we're at two different sides, right? So processing is different, right?
So cool to hear.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm interrupting. It's just so cool to hear like opposite perspectives
Yeah.
on
Right.
very similar things, because it's needed. It's so needed for people to hear these things so they don't feel like they're alone in their situation. Sorry.
Correct. No, but it's true, right? Because if this is out there and it's going out to multiple people are going to have multiple feelings.
Yeah.
And who's to say that my feeling hasn't felt that at some point in time either?
yeah.
And then, she's an amazing woman, and she can click into like where I sit back and I'm like, I want to be like him. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
On how do
Yes,
you process
yes.
that?
That's exactly how I feel, because I feel like I'm similar to you. Like, I'm very chill and I can't really process my emotions. And when I do, I become a belligerent idiot and I
Right.
start singing and like crying. And it's like, what does this guy say anymore?
Right.
So like, it's so
Yeah.
cool to see someone like they could literally break down and still be able to process and tell us exactly
Yeah.
why they feel that way.
You're just
and then
so,
on the opposite, you see yourself where
Right.
you've been through extremely similar positions and you're a little bit more calmer and a little bit more indifferent to the situation.
Right.
So it's super cool to see.
But I think like both are right.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
100%.
And so as you process through these feelings, it's like when it becomes uncomfortable to you, you want to do something about it, or you want to be loud about it, or you want to speak about it, right? I think that's it. Instead of letting it fester or going into your, I call it the sandbox theory. If you go in your sandbox and you're playing by yourself and like it just doesn't feel right, and you start throwing your toys at people, then something internally is wrong, and you got to look at that and go, okay, I got to talk about it. I got to be open about it, because if not, it's going to implode. And it's going to start to, like I said, it starts to affect all these different things in your life, and you don't know why it's doing that. And so it's super important to, like, catch that, know what's going on, know what your feeling is, and you may not know, but talk about it. I think that's the most important. Therapy, true, or finding somebody that you can invest those feelings into that's safe, and just saying, hey, this doesn't feel right. And hearing both sides, and I don't want to take all this, but hearing both sides of this lets me know that my mom made the right decision. My birth mother and my adopted mother, right? They made the best decision that was in my best interest, and I'm here, right? So, and we shared it this morning. We're finding what our purpose is, right? So there's a master plan out there, and way smarter than anything that I got to figure out. I don't hold anything. That plan is why we're here. You know what I mean? Awesome. But it takes a minute to get there.
Oh,
It takes a couple levels.
Definitely
Couple
does.
U-turns.
It's the journey, right?
Right.
It's not the destination, it's the journey.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's so I like necessary.
Yeah.
It's so necessary.
So necessary. And
So.
you all are so authentically you. And because each of you are so different, that's what makes this space right here so powerful, because your authenticity speaks for itself, where you all felt vulnerable and, like you trust us enough to really share like what your experiences are. And this is what's so helpful to our viewers, because everyone's feelings and experiences are different. And it doesn't make them right or wrong, right? It just makes them, this is what it is, and it needs to be validated. So
Antoinette.
So for me, the one, I got a lot of advice. First of all, it's take your power. It's your decision. Everybody is going to have an opinion. And everybody's opinion is going to be different. Don't allow that to shame you. Unfortunately, on either end of the spectrum, whether you end up going through and placing for adoption or you end up pulling back, somebody is going to be hurt and somebody is going to have to heal. At the end of the day, it's a very, very big decision. And reach out to me. You want to have a conversation and you want to weigh your options, let's sit down and make a pros and cons list. Like, it is one of the hardest decisions. And if you have a partner in this, lean into each other. The one thing that I can say me and my husband did was we fell apart. We pulled away from each other because we were trying to be strong for each other. And it ended up ripping us apart in the end. We did end up back together, but it ripped us apart for years. So lean into your partner. And if somebody wants to tell you that you ain't good enough because you making this life decision, there is no problem with putting that X and that boundary between you and that person until you're healed enough to have that conversation. I will say the person who I did have that did make that comment to me about me giving up my child for adoption, we had a conversation many years later and she apologized to me. And I love her for it, and she was able to hear my perspective. That didn't change the fact that it hurt.
Yeah.
But yeah, stand in your power.
Absolutely.
I'm
I'm gonna start crying, Kayla. Like, this has been so amazing, guys. And again, thank you to every single one of you. You guys are freaking awesome. Everybody watching at home, please make sure to like, subscribe, and share this podcast. We're growing, and it feels really awesome because of the fact that we're growing, we're getting more people, and we're changing the space, and we're getting more creative. So yeah, there were a lot of bumps on mics and a lot of weird like volume stuff. We're sorry. We're trying to figure it out. But the point was made, and I'm so grateful for it. So please like, subscribe, share this video. Leave a comment down below.
One more thing though, too.
Oh, he wants to share something.
We did get a shout out. We didn't send it to Chris.
No, I
just
know. I was just
realized.
gonna. Okay.
Oh.
I'm
No.
No, you can
No,
say it.
no. Go ahead. You start.
No, so we got a shout out. I don't know what the name of the page was, and they do like I guess reviews for podcasts.
Yeah,
And they did
mental
like a
health,
top
wellness,
15 list,
yeah.
and we were number 2 or 3.
Yes.
Yeah.
Far out.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I did not know this.
Top.
That's
I think it was
huge.
like top mental health or wellness podcast
In South Florida.
In
yeah.
South Florida.
That's so dope. I did not know that.
Yeah, we got to send it to you. It's pretty awesome.
Please
So,
do. I'm
as
gonna
much as
start
we are
crying.
bumping mics and stuff. Whoa. We are bringing good information, and
Yeah.
and obviously you start somewhere, and you know we're
We're
beginning
so,
off, and
we're so
we're gonna
this is
bring a lot
going
more
up,
cool
guys.
stuff.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
is just the beginning. We got so many things planned.
only up
We got so
from
many
here.
topics planned.
Why? Because it's necessary.
Because it's necessary, yeah.
and we care about you all, and we know that wellness doesn't happen in the ones; it happens in the many. So,
yeah. So we got a lot of stuff coming up. May is gonna be huge, so keep an eye out. It's mental. What's it called again?
Oh my gosh, it's Mental Health Awareness in May.
Mental health
Youth
awareness.
Mental health awareness, and this month is all about social justice. Can I get a hallelujah?
Hallelujah. So we're gonna have a lot of great topics, more guests coming on. You definitely want to tune in for the month of May. But for this episode, please like, subscribe, share, comment. We love to hear your thoughts and opinions always. Please share on social media so we can get more people watching these episodes. And if you're one of our lovely, lovely audio listeners, we hear you, we see you, we love you. Please give us a 5-star rating so the podcast gets shared to more places and more people can find us and hear these wonderful, wonderful stories. So please do all of that good stuff. We'll see you on the very next one. Bye-bye.